Valerie Yule, and I run Oz Ideas, but I used to be a clinical child psychologist, and I was in schools, particularly disadvantaged schools, and I noticed that children arrived up to the age of 5, they asked the questions. But from the age of 5, the minute they were over the doorstep, it was the teacher that asked the questions. And that is the reason for the dip. I've also got a manuscript of stories that children have told me with their drawings. I've got about 600 pages of it, and that, I think, will give the children's views of what happens to them. And I'm trying to get it published, and I'll give you all a copy. And
Lulu.com. Go to lulu.com.
Yes, right. Yes.
No, do it.
I'll try to do that.
Get it published immediately.
Yes, because I think it is well worth that British children too. So if you could, well, I better give someone else a go.
Thank you, Valerie. I appreciate that. Harry had one before, and please indicate after it who next. And Harry was there.
Marianne,
yes.
A question for you.
Yes.
As Chancellor of La Trobe,
yes.
I assume you're in an eminent position to influence change. I would hope so. Taking Brendan's idea about the D School and particularly the project team-based folks, because I think that's very critical. What I see very often in institutions, they talk about multidisciplinary and so forth, but largely what they do is they put different departments into a shiny new building, but it's really business as usual. Is there a way that this could actually be done in our university to have true multidisciplinary activity around key projects, and this is around challenges, issues, problems, opportunities, but also giving the opportunity, and you talked about the different ages, bringing schools, getting those, students, giving them an opportunity to be involved in projects, and even doing that in secondary schools.
Mm. Well, certainly I can respond. I'm fairly new to the Chancellor role, but I'm certainly trying to influence, particularly science and maths education. But the children do come into the schools. All the local schools in the area of La Trobe at the Bundoora campus come in. They have days in the lab. And it's very successful recruiting technique to get them excited at an early stage. So they do come in and they do have classes and they are excited about it. Multidisciplinary is very interesting. Often you start with a question and then ask the good question, and then if you have a leader, then you bring other people together to focus all the disciplines on it. Now, for instance, multidisciplinary's got a number of different meanings. You can have, say, in biochemistry or in biology, you can say this is multidisciplinary. You've got to have protein chemistry, molecular biology, gross biology, crop biology, soil science. You've got to bring all those things together with business to take that invention into the field. Or you can say, if we're doing a project that is perhaps got social implications, that you need to actually get the sociologists to work together with the scientists and get the philosophers involved too. That's a little bit more complex, and we've not got such a lot of experience anywhere, I think, at doing that particularly well. But people are trying, and again, to me, it all comes down to personal relationships. You've got to have a philosopher you can connect with. You've got to have a sociologist whose methodology you respect, to be involved with the science whose methodology you understand. So it's, in fact, the Academy of Technological Sciences and Engineering has just completed a project in how to construct the best practice for multidisciplinary projects. So this is the broadest sense. So people are trying to learn how to do it. But at the heart of it all, to me, it's you've got to work with people you like and respect in their own areas. And you've got to have a good question.
May I expand on Adrian's answer in that...
Please, when you ask a question or comment, please stand up to do so.
Sorry. At La Trobe University, in the Faculty of Health Sciences, every single health practitioner in the making is in a common first year. So physios, OTs, podiatrists, the whole lot. They work totally interdisciplinary across the first year. They come into their courses, but they're mixed. And it's all problem-based learning. And so right from the very start, they're interdisciplinary. They work with each other. Problem-based learning, plus everything also includes all our remote students online. So every class is a wiki. And that's happening at La Trobe, and it's a very exciting development, so that the physio, when they graduate, doesn't hate the OT nearly as much.
Yes.
Thank you, Felicity. Thank you very much.
Just a tiny word about funding, which is quite interesting. It's interesting how the funding for education is so compartmentalised, and you'll all know that, you know, if we do turn schools around and we do make learning more seductive and delightful, the immediate savings will be to the Youth Justice Service, they'll be to police force, they'll be to the benefits system. Heaps of government departments will see significant savings, but they don't put the money in a sack and take it down to education and give it back to the kids. And I think one of the biggest problems here is the disconnect between learning and all the places that learning can impact on. We've funded education on a sort of a kind of an act of faith that it is an investment. And most governments around the world in this recession have stopped thinking of education as an investment, started thinking of it as a cost. And their fundamental questions are, how can we reduce the cost, not what might we invest in? And I just think we need to build that reconnect between learning and industry, learning and ingenuity, learning and justice. And, you know, because without that, we're doing everybody else's work for free, and we can't afford to do that.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you. You were there.
My name is Oneta Pizag. My background is architecture, and currently I'm an environmental design consultant. I'm working with architects, helping them to design buildings that are environmentally sustainable and which are also good for people. It's good for their health, well-being, and create happiness, essentially. And I'm working in a large corporation currently, and I find that it's an environment which is very strongly driven by the brand, driven by the aim to be professional. And sometimes I sense that this whole understanding of what professionalism means and brand means and template means is creating some sort of a constraint to creativity. Often I have discussions with my colleagues about me intending to provide some services to my clients which hasn't been previously defined by the scope of works that has been approved. And it creates resistance. There is a fear of being actually sued. There is a fear of providing an advice which is not 100% backed up by calculations. And Brendan, I was very inspired by you mentioning how important aspect playfulness is in the process of creativity, and I find myself a very playful person, and I find that in this sort of attitude, it's a bit of a challenge, actually, to be truly mindful and giving the best I can offer.
Yeah,
I think that's... I have to say that we're here to talk about education. I think if we're going to talk about changing corporate and organisational life, that will take us another 2 hours at a minimum. But a really good question. So please, Brendan, answer in that context.
With respect to your answer, maybe we should take that one offline and answer it. I'm fascinated by the issue. I gave my students the problem of how to reinvent a corporate meeting, and some of the insights were just wonderful that came back from that. So many signals, the way that people sit around a room and who comes in first, and then using those insights to design solutions that are better. But I think probably the same could translate to some of the student-teacher behavior. Someone was talking about the teacher, Bella was talking about the teacher starts talking and then the students don't talk anymore. So how do you encourage that dialogue too? So it's really...
and it is a key question. I mean, I had a PhD student, Stan Owers, spent a lot of time doing sociograms of face-to-face meetings in corporate, in student seminars, in classrooms, and it was all pretty bleak, to be honest. And I think the, because they would dominate, people would dominate the conversation. There was a moment when he was at a meeting at Ford's, or I shouldn't have mentioned, a large motor vehicle with a blue badge, you know. And there was a girl in the room who knew more about the conversation they were having than anybody else in the room, and she didn't speak because the dynamic of the room, you know, didn't. And he'd said to her at the end, "But you didn't speak, you know, and you knew so much." And she came up with a lovely phrase which was in his doctorate. She said, "I thought they knew so little it would be churlish to intervene." You know,
I think there's a lot around each organization has its own culture and what are those norms and behaviors, and so you can walk into a place and see, boy, this is a stiff place. And I think there's probably the same for different education settings too. Like what is your environment saying about the place and how are people treating each other? So a lot of your question comes down to, can you change that culture or do you got to get away from it? I mean,
and the big difference is what's happening all over Melbourne, all over London, all over everywhere is that every corporation is now seeking to be a learning organisation. It's a big change. There used to be a training organisation, had a training manager with a training budget, in the basement full of video discs. I mean, remember all of them, you know. And suddenly they want to do learning. They don't know how to do learning. But the few that do find out how to do learning, and a key part of it is playfulness, you know, and Google, and look at the guys who just invented graphene, you know, at Manchester University. It was in the play space they built for themselves. That's probably the most important material science invention of your lifetime, you know. So the ones that understand how to be a learning organisation and realise how important play is in that will survive, you know.
Thank you. Adrian,
I'd like
last
to have
question on this topic.
one go at that because
another
it's so interesting and it comes up so often. There's a bright woman who is creative in an organisation.
Of blokes.
Of blokes. and all the analysis that the people have done recently in Australia about women in senior management and women on boards come up with exactly this situation. And the answer to it in the short term is you say what you'd like to do, you have this idea, you say it a few times, you wait for 6 weeks, and then the boss comes back and says, I had this fabulous idea. And you say, yes. So it happens. I mean, this is the result of the research as to why women find it difficult to get to senior management. So there's one of the points. So well documented.
It's about attribution then.
It's about attribution. Yeah. Once they think once the boss thinks it's his idea, it'll happen. So
and that's another big topic.